I still don't know how the footage reached me. A small, unmarked package showed up at the university mailroom in Fairbanks, Alaska, in the middle of winter. No return address, no explanation. Just a USB drive wrapped in a plastic bag and a single note that said, "You're the only one who'll believe this." At first, I thought it was a prank. People in my department know I specialize in Arctic anthropology, the cultures that existed in isolation, the old Inuit legends about creatures that came from the white void. So, when I plugged that drive into my laptop, I expected the usual, a student documentary, maybe a hoax. But what I saw was raw, unedited, and terrifyingly real. It was a collection of videos, audio logs, and GPS coordinates from a missing research team. The Holloway Expedition, last seen in March 2021. Officially, they vanished during a blizzard somewhere north of the Brooks Range. The authorities said they got lost. Frostbite, hypothermia, tragic but common in that part of the world. Except the footage didn't end with a snowstorm. It ended with screaming. The first clip began with a shaky GoPro shot, a snow-covered ridge, orange twilight, and 5 figures hauling equipment up a slope. The person holding the camera was Dr. Lena Holloway, 36 years old, anthropologist and expedition leader. Day 3, she said, breath fogging the lens. Temperature is -41. Visibility's dropping, but we're close. The drones picked up something metallic under the ice shelf, roughly 100 meters below where the old village was supposed to be. Behind her, you could see the others: Ethan Cole, the cameraman, ex-military; Samir Patel, the geologist, silent but sharp; Nora Quinn, the sound technician; and Jacob Rudd, the youngest, historian, barely 25. They were laughing, exhausted, their breath forming clouds in the orange light. The wind howled around them like something alive. Then the video cut to later that night inside their tent. Nora's voice whispered off camera, "Do you hear that?" There was a faint rhythmic knocking sound outside, slow, deliberate, echoing through the frozen air. 3 knocks. Then silence. Someone chuckled nervously, "It's the ice shifting." But no one really believed that. The next file was labeled Drone Footage, March 5. The drone camera flew over a vast white expanse. For a long time there was nothing, just endless snow and rock. Then it panned across a dark patch, a circle carved into the ice, about 20 meters wide. At its center was something that looked like an altar, stone slabs, symbols etched into the ice, spiraling inward. The footage zoomed in, revealing markings that looked almost like runes, but not Norse, not Inuit. Something older. Lena's voice spoke through the radio, no sign of wildlife, no structural remains, just this. There was a pause. Whatever this is, it wasn't made by nature. The GPS data attached to that file placed their location roughly 80 kilometers from the nearest mapped human settlement. That's deeper than any tribe, any explorer, or even oil survey team had ever recorded venturing. I paused the video, rewound it, zoomed in on the altar. That's when I saw it. Carved into the stone were faces, hundreds of them. Human faces, half erased by ice, mouths open in silent screams. The next video was darker, shot inside the main tent again. The storm outside roared like an animal. The camera flickered. Jacob was pacing. "We should go back," he said. "I swear something's moving out there. The snow. It's not wind. It's breathing." Lena snapped at him. "It's the wind, Jacob. Calm down." But his eyes were wide, unfocused. "No. It's under the ice." Then faintly through the howling wind, you could hear it. Not the regular moan of a blizzard, something deeper. A low, pulsing sound that rose and fell in a strange rhythm, almost like chanting. Ethan moved to the tent flap and opened it just a crack. The camera captured a glimpse, darkness, and in the distance, shapes, not people, not animals. Tall, black silhouettes standing motionless on the ridge. Lena shouted, "Close it!" Ethan zipped the flap shut, and then the knocking returned. 3 knocks, closer this time. At this point, I had to stop the video. My skin was crawling. I'd heard legends of things that dwell beneath the permafrost. Creatures the Inuit called takriaksuk, the shifters. They say they imitate the lost, the frozen, the dead, and when they find warmth, they replace it. But I told myself it was pareidolia. Humans see faces and patterns everywhere. Then I opened the last video. This one didn't have a timestamp. It began with chaos, the tent ripped apart, the camera rolling in the snow, screams, shouting, the sound of metal striking ice. Nora's voice was sobbing. It took him. Oh God, it took him. Then silence. For a long, awful moment the only sound was the wind. The camera lay sideways. The lens caught the flicker of a flare, illuminating what was left of Ethan's snow gear, shredded, scattered, blood frozen into the snow like rusted glass. Footsteps crunched closer to the camera. It was Lena. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken, frost clinging to her lashes. "It's not human," she whispered. "It's old. It doesn't die here. It waits." She lifted the camera, turning it toward the ridge, and there, against the black sky, you could see something vast moving between the mountains. No clear shape, no face, just a shifting void, like darkness folding in on itself. The camera staticked out. I sat in silence for hours. Then I checked the coordinates embedded in the file. They led to a no-man's land north of the Koyukuk River Basin, where the ice never melts and no satellite can get a clear image. I called the authorities. They told me the Holloway expedition case was closed, natural disaster. But here's the thing. 3 days after I watched that footage, I received another envelope. No note this time, just a single photog. It showed the same ridge from the footage, but now there was a sixth figure standing beside the altar. Someone wearing my university parka. Except I've never been there, and I never will. At least that's what I keep telling myself, because sometimes, late at night, when the temperature drops and the house creaks, I still hear those 3 knocks. The Holloway expedition began like any other scientific venture, with optimism, funding, and an undercurrent of quiet ego. Lena Holloway had spent 5 years proposing this journey. She wanted to locate the remains of an undocumented Arctic settlement, supposedly belonging to a pre-Inuit civilization that vanished more than 3,000 years ago. She called it Project Kilaluk, after a word that meant beneath the ice. The university thought it was nonsense at first, another myth-hunting expedition, until she produced fragments of carvings found in an old trade cache, depicting symbols that didn't match any known language family. Those symbols looked eerily similar to the runes later found on that frozen altar. The team assembled in February 2021, a month before departure. I remember attending one of their briefings. Lena spoke, with the quiet conviction of someone who'd already decided truth was waiting for her, no matter the risk. Ethan Cole sat in the back, arms folded, bored and detached. Samir Patel was buried in geological charts, muttering about plate shifts and glacial cavities. Nora Quinn, always restless, kept recording the sound of the room on her portable mic, saying she wanted to capture the silence of anticipation. And then there was Jacob Rudd, the youngest, full of admiration for Lena. But there was something else in his eyes even then, a kind of fascination that bordered on obsession. 2 days before their flight, the group stayed in a small cabin outside Anchorage to test equipment. That night, Jacob claimed to have seen something through the frost-covered window. "Someone standing near the tree line," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and shone it through the glass. Nothing but swirling snow. Jacob insisted the figure had been there, a tall, dark outline, motionless. Lena laughed it off. "You've been reading too many of my field notes," she said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later that night, she wrote something in her journal. The next. Nora recorded her humming the same tune repeatedly while packing, a low, almost mournful rhythm. When Samir asked what it was, she said it came to her in a dream. Their journey north began with a small cargo plane out of Fairbanks. The footage from that day is bright, cheerful even, the group clinking coffee mugs, joking about frostbite. Nora narrating into her mic, "We are officially leaving civilization behind. If you're hearing this, either we made history or we froze trying." No one could have guessed how close she was to the truth. As the plane flew over the endless white expanse of tundra, Lena pointed out landmarks, frozen rivers, jagged cliffs, black veins of exposed rock that looked almost like scars across the land. At one point, the pilot mentioned something odd. "You folks sure you want to go that far north? Compass readings get funny up there. Planes don't like it." Lena only smiled and said, "That's where the truth hides, in places compasses refuse to point." They set up base camp near a frozen lake that hadn't been mapped since the 1950s. The temperature dropped to -36 that first night. In their initial recordings, you can already hear the isolate ion creeping in. Long pauses between sentences, the way their laughter sounds strained. Jacob mentions hearing what he thought was whispering outside his tent. Ethan tells him it's the wind dragging across the ice. But when Nora plays back the audio the next morning, there's something else mixed in. A faint, rhythmic humming beneath the static, almost like a woman's voice singing far away. She laughs it off, but you can hear her unease. Over the next few days, strange patterns began appearing in the snow around camp. Perfect circles, sometimes interlocking, sometimes leading toward the ridge. They blamed wind eddies at first, but the tracks were too precise, too deliberate. Samir documented them, measuring the spacing, always 13 inches apart. If it's natural, he said, nature's developed a sense of geometry. That night, the aurora stretched low across the sky, bathing the landscape in pale green light. Ethan's camera caught something flickering at the edge of the horizon, a shadow that didn't belong to any of them. When the light shifted, it vanished. The dream started after that. Nora mentioned it first in her audio log. "It's always the same," she whispered. "I'm sta. Ending in the snow, but it's not cold. I can hear breathing. Mine, maybe." Then something under the ice starts whispering my name. The next morning, Lena admitted she'd had the same dream, except in hers, the voice wasn't calling her name. It was repeating coordinates, numbers she couldn't remember upon waking. Ethan laughed when she told him, but later that day, when they checked the drone footage, one of the coordinates matched the location of that circular depression in the ice. Jacob grew quieter each day. He stopped eating properly, started staring into the distance for long stretches, lips moving silently as if in prayer. Samir caught him one morning standing barefoot outside his tent, eyes closed, whispering something in a language none of them recognized. When confronted, he claimed he'd been sleepwalking. But when Ethan replayed the video from that night, the timestamp showed Jacob leaving the tent just after 3 a.m., the same time the strange humming sound began again in the background of Nora's recordings. By the end of the first week, the weather turned violent. Whiteouts lasted for hours, equipment batteries drained faster than they should have, the compass needles spun erratically. Samir theorized a magnetic anomaly beneath the ice, maybe caused by metallic ore. But that didn't explain why their watches stopped at the exact same moment each night. 3:17 a.m. Lena's journal entries grew fragmented after that. Sentences trailed off midway. Words repeated. One page simply read, "It's not a place, it's a pulse." Their last calm evening is preserved in a short clip. They sit inside the main tent, sharing freeze-dried stew, joking softly. Nora hums that same dream song under her breath. Outside, the wind dies completely. The air seems heavy, almost expectant. Then Jacob glances toward the flap and whispers, "It's here." Everyone goes silent. "What's here?" Ethan asks, but Jacob just shakes his head and mutters, "The thing beneath." The camera pans to Lena, her face pale, the spoon frozen midway to her lips. A faint sound echoes from somewhere outside, not the storm, not the wind, something deep, hollow, and deliberate. 3 knocks. That was their last recorded dinner together before the descent toward the altar. The next morning they began moving toward the ridge, following the exact line of those circular patterns in the snow. Later, when rescue ERs reviewed the GPS trail, they found it led in a perfect spiral before stopping abruptly at the edge of a crevasse. Beyond that, the signal vanished. When I think back on that footage now, what disturbs me most isn't the knocks, or the symbols, or even the shadows. It's the way their laughter slowly disappeared. Every clip after that moment grows quieter, emptier, as if the ice itself were swallowing their voices. And in the last few seconds of Part 2's footage, before the files corrupted completely, Nora's mic catches a whisper just beneath the static, a single word, spoken in a tone almost human. It says, "Come closer." By the time the Holloway expedition reached the ridge, the world behind them had disappeared into white. The horizon dissolved, the sky and the ground bleeding into one endless blur. The drone footage from that day shows the group as 5 tiny figures trudging through a storm that looked alive, the snow folding around them like waves. Lena's voice came through the radio, distorted by static. Visibility 30 meters. Keep formation, don't lose the line. Behind her, Jacob hummed softly to himself, that same low chant he'd begun whispering in his sleep. Winch. I finally reached the ridge. They set up a second camp. The altar was less than half a kilometer away, buried beneath layers of ice. The wind had carved deep hollows through the snow, making the ground creak with every step. Samir took soil readings, muttering about seismic irregularities, but the instruments were unreliable. Compasses spun in slow circles, thermometers fluctuated wildly. The magnetics here are broken, he said. Ethan laughed nervously. Maybe we're just standing on the world's biggest fridge magnet. No one else laughed. The next morning their radio died. Not just interference, complete failure. The backup transmitter sparked and went dead. Ethan tried to recalibrate it, but the display only showed a single repeating code, 317. The same time their watches had been freezing each night. That night, when they gathered inside the main tent, the silence felt suffocating. The storm had stopped completely. There was no wind, no movement, no sound. The microphones recorded nothing but a steady, unnatural hum, like the world itself was holding its breath. Lena tried to keep morale up. We stay put until the storm clears. Then we move south, she said, though the air outside was still. Samir disagreed, insisting they should start walking back immediately before another front closed in. But they had lost their bearings. Even the GPS displayed coordinates that didn't make sense, looping numbers, locations that placed them hundreds of kilometers off their known map. Nora pointed out that their footsteps from the day before had vanished entirely. The snow was untouched, as if they'd never walked there at all. That night something began circling the camp. They heard it first as faint crunching, footsteps in the snow, slow and deliberate. Ethan grabbed his headlamp and scanned the darkness, but the light just vanished into the fog. Then came a low growl, deep, distant, not animal, not human. Jacob whispered, "It's calling again." Nora told him to shut up, but his eyes were fixed on the tent wall, following some invisible movement. The footsteps stopped right outside. For a moment the only sound was breathing. Not theirs. Something heavier, slower. Then 3 sharp knocks on the tent pole. They froze. No one dared move. Lena finally whispered, "It's the wind." But there was no wind. The air outside was perfectly still. The knocks came again, low. Ooter this time, rattling the frame. Ethan ripped the zipper open and shone his flashlight into the dark. Nothing, just snow and the faint echo of their own panic. He stepped out for a moment, turning in slow circles. The camera on his chest flickered. Then faintly a figure appeared on the edge of the light, tall still, its outline blurred by frost. Ethan called out, "Hello?" The figure didn't move, it just tilted its head. The footage cuts out for several seconds. When it returns, Ethan is back inside, pale, shaking, his camera smeared with snow. "It looked like me," he muttered. "It looked exactly like me." Over the next few days, time began to lose shape. The sun rose and set in strange intervals, sometimes lingering in the sky for what felt like hours, sometimes vanishing abruptly. Their watches remained frozen at 317 no matter how many batteries they changed. Nora started talking to someone who wasn't there, soft murmurs in her tent long after everyone else had fallen silent. Lena found her one morning sitting just outside camp, barefoot, staring toward the ridge. Her lips were blue, her eyes unfocused. "It's warmer out here," she said, though her skin was covered in fro. Saint, when they dragged her back inside, she screamed and clawed at Ethan, insisting she could hear singing beneath the ice. Samir began recording everything compulsively, the way shadows shifted across the snow, the faint vibrations that sometimes pulsed through the ground, like distant thunder. "It's not magnetic," he told Lena. "It's biological." She didn't ask what he meant. Later, when his journal was recovered, one of his final entries read, "The ice breathes. It exhales heat when we sleep." By the 5th day, their food supply had frozen solid. Ethan melted snow for water, but it tasted metallic, bitter, wrong. Lena forced herself to eat, chewing slowly, her eyes fixed on the tent wall as though she expected it to move. Jacob refused to speak entirely. He spent hours staring at the altar through binoculars, whispering prayers under his breath. When Lena finally confronted him, he only smiled and said, "It's been waiting for us." That night, Nora woke everyone screaming. She said she saw someone crawling under the snow near the tents, a dark shape moving just beneath the surface, dragging itself toward them. Ethan and Samir ran out with headlamps, but the snow was untouched, smough, off and undisturbed. Nora refused to sleep after that. She sat upright all night, microphone in her lap, whispering to herself, "It's closer every time I blink." On the 6th night they heard voices outside, familiar ones. Ethan's voice calling for help, then Lena's faint and desperate, but they were all inside the tent together, staring at one another in horror. The voices grew louder, circling the camp. Nora covered her ears and wept. Jacob stood and reached for the zipper. "They're freezing," he said. "We can't leave them out there." Ethan grabbed his arm, shouting, "That's not us!" Jacob's expression softened, and for a moment he looked almost relieved. "Then who's been walking with us?" The next morning Jacob was gone. His footprints led a few meters from his tent before vanishing completely, as if he'd been lifted from the earth. Lena searched for hours before collapsing into the snow, whispering his name. Ethan found her later staring at the altar again. "He's not dead," she said quietly. "He's part of it now." Samir tried to lead the remaining 3 south, but no matter how far they walked, the ridge remained ahead of them, unmoving. It was as though the world had dead in on itself. Ethan grew frantic, marking trees, stabbing the snow with poles, but every time he looked back, the marks were gone. Nora stopped recording, saying the microphones were lying, that they were hearing things we weren't supposed to hear. That night the knocking returned. This time it came from beneath them, 3 hollow thuds rising through the ice floor of the tent. Then came a voice, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. Jacob's voice whispering from under the ground, "Come down, it's beautiful." Lena broke down completely after that. She tore through her journal, ripping pages out, screaming at the others to stop listening. "It's not a place," she shouted. "It's a mouth." The footage ends there, the screen filling with static and the faint hum of that unnatural chanting again. The sound that had followed them since the dreams began. When rescuers later examined the area months after their disappearance, they found no camp, no tents, no bodies. Only a half-buried recorder still blinking with power. On it, one final audio clip, Ethan's voice barely audible over the wind. "The ice isn't cold anymore. It's warm." And then, 3 slow knocks. The snow began low, before they reached the end of the world. It came down in soft, endless sheets, whispering over the windshield as the snowcat crawled north through the barren Alaskan tundra. The only light came from the machine's twin beams, carving tunnels through the storm. Inside, the 5 members of the Holloway expedition sat in silence, bundled in layers of fur and synthetic gear, each lost in their own thoughts. The radio crackled occasionally. Static, half-voices, the ghost of music from some distant signal that didn't belong in this part of the map. Lena Holloway sat in the passenger seat, her gloved hand gripping the dashboard. She was the kind of person whose mind never rested. Her notebook, a weathered leather journal, was filled with sketches, half-legends, coordinates. "If the readings are right," she murmured, barely audible over the engine's rumble, "then the magnetic anomaly started 3 months ago. Right after the temperature drop in this region." Ethan Cole, who drove the snowcat, grunted. "You think the stories about that village are real?" Lena didn't look up. "Something was there centuries ago. The Inupiat called it Kalurak, the hollow place. An entire settlement disappeared one winter without a trace. They said the snow swallowed them whole." Samir Patel, the geologist, looked up from his tablet. "We've scanned the region, Lena. No caves, no sinkholes. Just a weird magnetic flux. Could be iron veins, could be nothing." Jacob Rudd sat in the back, shivering. He wasn't made for this. His hands trembled as he flipped through pages of an old archival document he'd copied from a museum in Nome. It was a missionary's journal, dated 1832. He read aloud quietly. The sky roared and the ground trembled. The hunters returned with no shadows. He looked up, unease flickering across his face. What does that even mean? No shadows? Nora Quinn, the sound tech, laughed softly. Maybe the sun didn't want to look at them. Her humor barely disguised the nervousness in her eyes. She'd been recording since they left Fairbanks, the little shotgun mic on her camera picking up every crunch of snow and groan of the ice. She said it made her feel safe, like she was documenting proof that they existed, just in case something happened. Hours later, they stopped at an old research outpost, half buried under snow. The generator sputtered to life after some coaxing, filling the air with its warm mechanical hum. The team unloaded supplies, tents, heaters, sample kits. Ethan set up perimeter lights, their pale glow vanishing quickly into the blizzard. Inside the main cabin, Lena spread an old map across the table. "Tomorrow we move northeast," she said. "The coordinates from the drone scans place the anomaly right at the edge of the glacial ridge. We'll establish camp there." Jacob hesitated. "That close to the fault line?" "Yes. That's where the readings spike." She traced a finger over the map. "It's as if the ground's pulsing, like something beneath is breathing." That night they drank from tin cups and listened to the wind. It wasn't like any normal storm. It came in waves, almost rhythmic, as if the tundra itself exhaled and inhaled. Nora recorded it, noting the strange cadence. "Sounds alive," she said, "like a heartbeat slowed